Okay, today we're going to talk about what to do with extra pizza dough. I always encourage people when you're making pizza at home to make extra pizza dough, because you never know. You may have a launch that doesn't go well and you wind up with a little train wreck in your pizza oven and your pizza didn't come out, and so you still want to eat pizza. You've been planning on pizza. It doesn't take any additional effort to make a couple of extra dough balls in your batch, and it provides you insurance against if that happens. You still want to eat, and so you need a couple extra dough balls just in case that happens. And the thing is, if you have that extra dough and you didn't make pizzas out of all of it, you can still utilize it. So I'm going to talk to you about how to turn your extra dough, which is this, into this, utilizing this or this and this. So just with a few tools, you can turn your extra dough into bread that you can eat, and it's really fantastic bread. It's important to say at this point that I'm not a bread baker. So there's a lot of techniques that you can utilize if you're wanting to explore bread baking. This is about utilizing extra dough to make excellent bread, really fantastic bread. It's not sourdough bread. It's almost sourdough bread. It's sort of a country style bread. It's what you would call a lean bread. There's no additional fat or additives to it, no funny grains or nuts or anything like that. It's a lean bread, which is just water, salt, yeast, and flour. Water, salt, yeast, and flour. And it turns into an excellent bread because of the fermentation. So this dough that you see here was made day before yesterday. It was mixed the day before yesterday for use yesterday. And so now we're about 22 hours later, 22 hours after we were planning to utilize this dough. We had a little bit left over, and now we have this dough. And this is really the perfect time to utilize this dough in the fermentation process. When you smell this dough, it has that real sort of sour smell to it, where that fermentation has happened, and it has good sort of bubble structure to it. When you press down on it, you can see there's air that's in that dough. It has all the gluten all the gluten structures have formed, so it's a smooth and shiny dough. It's real elastic. So this is a real good time to utilize that. What that means is when you make your pizzas, if you make pizzas the night before, and then the next day you want to make bread out of that, you've got, you know, a 10 to 12 hour window where you can make great bread, and that happens, you know, 12 hours after you've made pizzas. So you kind of got that 24-hour period where you look at where you want to make bread out of that, and it makes excellent bread. So what I have is I've got 4 dough balls left over. They're about 250 grams a piece. So it's about 1,000 grams, about 1 kilogram. We're gonna weigh it and see exactly what it is here. Give me a second, I'll grab my scale. So I've got my scale here, and I'm gonna grab my dough and just weigh exactly what it is. And it's a little on the sticky side, so you kind of got to use quick fingers here. Yeah, but I've got to get to grams. And I'm at grams now. Yeah, 1,013 grams on my dough ball. Right around there, 1,014. So just 1 kilogram. You can utilize less than that. You can do 3 dough balls, which would be about 750 kilograms or 750 grams, up to 5 dough balls if you wanted to. 5 dough balls would be a big loaf of bread there, but 4 dough balls works out perfect. So the only other thing that you need in that is you need your pizza stones. And I've got those in my conventional oven there. You can see my pizza stones have had some use. We sort of keep them in and near our conventional oven for this purpose, because I bake bread every week. I've got bread all the time at our house. So we just put them in there about the middle rack of the oven, and we preheat the oven at 385, preheat it for about an hour before we're baking the bread. Okay, so first things before we form the dough ball is to get our towel set. So this is, I don't know what they call these. You can get these in a pack of 10 at Walmart. They may call it cheesecloth, I'm not sure. But it's a real thin towel there. But they're super handy because they dry quickly. And they're good sized towels. I don't know what that is, 16 inches by 16 inches. It's square, but it's real thin. And I like them for bread because it is breathable, and that will, it will allow your bread to dry out just a little bit, just the exterior, before you put it in the oven. And if you do it right, it gives you a nice, this is the top of the bread loaf and this is the bottom of the bread loaf. It gives you a nice crusty bottom. If you are a fan of the Great British Bake Off, it's not a soggy bottom, but it's a nice crusty bottom there. So I do like these towels, but you can do it with a conventional kitchen towel as well. We'll do it with both. If I'm using this towel, what I do is I just fold it in half, just like this, and try to not to have any real noticeable creases in there, because those creases are actually going to form in your loaf there, and it'll make it, those will actually transfer through the baking process there. So then we've got a nice size for that. Whenever I put the dough in, you'll see I have a particular way that I fold that. If you're using just a standard kitchen towel, do not use a terry cloth towel because the terry cloth towel is going to transfer small fibers into your dough, which will then go into your bread, and that's not pleasant eating. So you don't want a terry cloth towel, you just want a standard cloth tea towel or kitchen towel there. And this is one of those. So it works out just fine. You don't have to fold it in half. Whenever we fold the dough ball into there, you'll see it works out great. So now we're going to form our dough. The only other thing that we need is semolina, which semolina, you can see ours has a little tape, a little painter's tape on it that says house semolina, because we're in our 50s now and we get confused on things. And so this is a little snapshot into our life where we have to label things. We have semolina that goes into the food trailer, and then we have this semolina that stays in the house, so that we always have semolina in the house. And then we have forgotten semolina a couple of times early on whenever we were first starting the pizza trailer. So there you go. That's a little more than you needed to know about us. But at any rate, this is our house semolina. I like this container. It's just about the right size for once I form this dough ball. I can just kind of dip it in to the semolina. So here's my dough ball. Got my bench scraper. Here's my dough ball. It is sticky and there's air in there. What we want is whenever the dough comes out, we want a nice crumb structure in there that has good airy structure to it, but nothing huge gaping holes or anything like that, so that when you use it, it's just stuff is falling through because there's big 2-inch holes in there. But it has a nice fermentation structure to it that is nice and airy, but nice crust on the outside there. And it's just a country style bread. So, and again, I'm not a bread baker, I'm a pizza maker, but this out of pizza dough makes good bread that I like a lot. And this is the way we do it. We are going to make a batard, which is not a boule, which is a round loaf in French. It is not a baguette, which is the long loaf. It is a mixture of the two, or a batard is what they call it in French, which is, translates to English, it's a bastard. It is the mix between the two there. So we're going to do a batard, which is a long loaf, which is what I showed you before, but not a long baguette. It's a mix between a boule and a baguette. So we're going to kind of press those extra, because it's been fermenting so long, we're going to press those extra fermentation bubbles out of there so we don't get any huge fermentation bubbles in there. And then we're going to take and we're going to start, you'll see bread bakers when they do this with a higher hydration loaf, when they're actually just making a batard, their formulation is a little bit different, and they will wrap it over and then wrap it again and press it, and it's beautiful the way it works. They do that in a banneton. They'll set it in a banneton, dip it in flour, and set it in a banneton. This is sort of an adaptation of that, because this is pizza dough. It's working a little bit different. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of take these corners here and fold them in on each other, and then we're going to start wrapping this dough that same way. So I'm tucking the ends in, and then I'm forming it into my loaf there. And you can see there, I've now got a good seal on the bottom. I've got a good shape to my loaf. It's nice and even. Sometimes you can get a little bit more on the ends than in the middle. That'll all even out in the next stage there. So now I'm going to pick this up, because it's so sticky, it will stick to my towel if I don't get it coated in semolina. So I'm going to pick this up, and you got to kind of have quick fingers. I dip the ends first so that they don't stick to my container, and then I'm rolling my loaf in semolina. And what you want is, you just don't want any sticky parts to your dough. You don't want to have just a ton of semolina, but you want the entire surface to be coated in semolina, because if you don't, it's going to stick to your towel, and it will not be fun. If it sounds like I'm speaking from experience, it's because I am. I've done that plenty of times. So if I was using my standard kitchen towel, I am going to place it top side up. This is going to be the top side that we're going to score before we put it into the oven. I'm going to just set it right in the middle of the towel there. And the way I fold that, you can see this is, I got a handy little racing stripe on my towel so you can tell where the middle is. What I'm going to do when I fold this towel is I'm going to fold it all the way over, and then fold just about 1 inch to 1.5 inches back there. And then I'll fold this part of the towel over that. This gives me a little piece that I can help to, this folded piece, I'm going to use my fingers to pull this part up while I'm pulling this part forward. So it gives me a kind of a little cleat where I'm cinching the loaf like that. Then I'm going to fold the ends over just like this, and then I would put it into, this is a 9-inch long, just a little Tupperware thing that comes from Walmart. I'm going to put it into there. It's my little makeshift banneton. So the top of the loaf of bread is at the bottom with the fold to it. The bottom of the loaf of bread is at the top. And what that does is it keeps the top of the loaf of bread pliable, so that when it bakes in the oven, it's going to expand and not split on the bottom. And the bottom of the loaf of bread will dry a little bit depending on how long you have that loaf in there. So that's the way we're doing that. We're keeping the top of the loaf of bread pliable. So now I'm going to show you that same thing with my cheesecloth. I'm going to call it cheesecloth. I don't know if it is cheesecloth, but it's it's like that. Like I said, you can get those in a pack of 10 from Walmart, which is great. They're super cheap there, and they do work out really well for this process. So here we go. I got my my little towel, my linen towel. That may be just what they call it, a linen towel, I don't know. But you can see it's a little bit smaller this way. And my loaf of bread, my loaf is now starting to relax a little bit, so it's expanding out already, which is why we're wrapping it in the towel, so that we can have it keep form there. So I'm going to fold it back this way. I'm going to get my cleat, for my little finger cleat, and then I'm going to wrap this part up, and you can see it barely kind of meets there. So I'm still going to cinch it, and now it's tight. And then I'm wrapping over, folding over, just like that. I am not like a Christmas present wrapping expert. Cheryl does all the wrapping. Mine go in bags there. But this is pretty simple wrapping there, so even I can do it. So even I can handle that. And then it goes in our little makeshift Tupperware Banneton. It's not really a Banneton. You can get one relatively cheap on Amazon if you want, but this will do. So again, bottom of the loaf is facing up. The top of the loaf is at the bottom there. We're going to give it anywhere between an hour and a half and like 4 or 5 hours, somewhere along there. The longer that you have it in here, the more that bread is going to continue to expand, and it'll be tight. If you give it 4 to 5 hours, it'll continue to ferment and expand. That dough is always fermenting. The yeast is always doing its job. And so it'll be nice and tight. Then when we take it out, we're just going to take it out just like this. I'm not going to bake this, but I will show you what we would do. Take it out just like that. Form it back into kind of an even loaf, just like that. I've got my lamb. It looks like lame, but it's called a lamb. And so we'll just make a little score mark right on the top and make sure that that's sort of nice and deep there. And then that goes into that preheated oven, 385 for 35 minutes, 37 minutes. And that'll get it nice and crusty on the outside. It should expand real well, so that score mark is going to look like this. Here, it'll look real nice. And that loaf will go from this to this. It'll be beautiful bread. You cut into it. Super nice. This is still warm. I just baked this morning. And so it will go from this to this. This is that dough baked. So just one of the uses that you can have from leftover pizza dough. Again, I'm not a bread baker, but I do love this bread. It's simple. It's good. It tastes good, that sourness from that long fermentation process and that high quality Italian flour that we use. It's so easy to make this to this. You'll be making pizzas every week and then turning it into bread, and it'll be magic. You'll feel like a pro making this homemade bread, and then you can turn that into panzanella salad or meatballs or any number of things, breadcrumbs for your chicken parm or whatever you like. It's so useful to be able to have that fresh baked homemade bread that will go stale after a couple of days, but that doesn't mean its life is over. You go from this to panzanella to all those other things, and now you've got that Italian life where you're not throwing away anything, you're repurposing ingredients there. So I hope you enjoy that, and I hope you enjoy your pizza making, but then let that pizza making live on there.